Scene 13. Reveal a holy shit moment. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou. Every office worker has seen a manila envelope. But where most people see a manila envelope as a means of distributing documents, Steve Jobs sees a memorable moment that will leave his audience in awe. This is the MacBook Air, he said in January 2008, so thin it even fits inside one of those envelopes you see floating around the office. With that, Jobs walked to the side of the stage, picked up one such envelope and pulled out a notebook computer. The audience went wild as the sound of hundreds of cameras clicking and flashing filled the auditorium. Like a proud parent showing off a newborn, Jobs held the computer head high for all to see. You can get a feel for how thin it is. It has a full-size keyboard and full-size display. Isn't it amazing? It's the world's thinnest notebook, said Jobs. The photo of Jobs pulling the computer from the envelope proved to be the most popular of the event and was carried by major newspapers, magazines, and websites. The dramatic introduction even sparked an entrepreneur to build a carrying sleeve for the MacBook Air that looked like, you guessed it, a manila envelope. When Jobs slipped the computer out of the envelope, you could hear the gasp in the room. You knew most people in the audience that they were thinking, holy shit, that's thin. ABC News declared, the MacBook Air has the potential to reshape the laptop industry. The laptop fits inside a standard office manila envelope, which is how Jobs presented it as the showstopper of this year's conference of all things Apple. The showstopper had been planned all along, well before Jobs enacted the stunt in front of an audience. Press releases had been written, images created for the website, and ads developed showing a hand pulling the notebook from a manila envelope. The holy shit moment had been scripted to elicit an emotional response. The presentation as theater. Raising a product launch to an art form. On January 24, 2009, Macintosh celebrated its 25th anniversary. Apple's Macintosh had reinvented the personal computer industry in the 80s. A computer with a mouth and a graphical user interface was a major transformation from the old command line interfaces prevalent then. The Mac was much easier to use than anything IBM had at the time. The Mac's introduction was also one of the most spellbinding product launches of its day. The unveiling took place a quarter century earlier during the Apple shareholders meeting held at the Flint Center at De Anza College near the Apple campus. All 2,571 seats were filled as employees, analysts, shareholders, and media representatives buzzed with anticipation. Jobs dressed in gray slacks, a double-breasted jacket, and bow tie, kicked off the presentation with a quote by his favorite musician, Bob Dylan. After describing the features of the new computer, Jobs said, all of this power fits into a box that is 1/3 the size and weight of an IBM PC. You've just seen pictures of Macintosh. Now I'd like to show you Macintosh in person. All of the images you are about to see on the large screen are being generated by what's in that bag. He pointed to a canvas bag in the center of the stage. After a pause, he walked to the center stage and pulled the Macintosh computer out of the bag. He plugged it in, inserted a floppy disk, and stood aside. The lights darkened. The Vangelis theme from Chariots of Fire began to play, and a series of images scrolled across the screen. Mac Write and Mac Paint, which came free with the Mac. As the music faded, Jobs said, "Now we've done a lot of talking about Macintosh recently, but today, for the first time ever, I'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself." On that cue, Macintosh spoke in a digitized voice. "Hello, I'm Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I'd like to share with you a maxim I thought of the first time I met an IBM mainframe. Never trust a computer you can't lift." Obviously, I can talk right now, but I'd like to sit back and listen. So it's with considerable pride that I introduced a man who has been like a father to me, Steve Jobs. The crowd went wild, standing, cheering, hollering. Letting Macintosh speak for itself was a brilliant technique to garner the most buzz and publicity. 25 years later, the YouTube video clip from that portion of the announcement has been viewed 500,000 times. Jobs had created a memorable moment that people would talk about for decades, a genuine showstopper. One theme. The secret to creating a memorable moment is to identify the one thing, the one theme that you want your audience to remember after leaving the room. Your listeners should not need to review notes, slides, or transcripts of the presentation to recall the one thing. They will forget many of the details, but they will remember 100% of what they feel. Think about the one thing Apple wanted you to know about MacBook Air. It's the world's thinnest notebook. That's it. A customer could learn more by visiting the website or an Apple store. The presentation was meant to create an experience and to bring the headline to life. It struck an emotional connection with the listener. Jobs had one key message that he wanted to deliver about the first iPod. It fits 1,000 songs in your pocket. The message was simple and consistent in presentations, press releases, and the Apple website. However, it remained a tagline until Jobs brought it to life in October 2001. Just as playwright sets the stage early and reveals the plot of over time, Jobs never gives away the big moment right out of the gate. He builds the drama. Jobs took the stage to introduce the iPod and slowly added layers to the message until he hit the big note. The biggest thing about iPod is that it holds 1,000 songs, Jobs said. To have your whole music library with you at all times is a quantum leap in listening to music. A device that carried 1,000 songs wasn't unique at the time. What came next was the big news. But the coolest thing about iPod is your entire music library fits in your pocket. It's ultra portable. iPod is the size of a deck of cards. Jobs' slide showed a photograph of a card deck. It's 2.4 inches wide. It's 4 inches tall and barely 3/4 of an inch thick. This is tiny. It also only weighs 6.5 ounces, lighter than most of the cell phones you have in your pockets right now. This is what's so remarkable about iPod. It's ultra portable. This is what it looks like. Jobs showed a series of photographs. He still hadn't shown the actual device. In fact, I happen to have one right here in my pocket. Jobs then took a device out of his pocket and held it up high as the audience cheered. He had his photo up. He concluded, "This amazing little device holds 1,000 songs and goes right in my pocket." The headline in New York Times read, 1,000 songs in your pocket. Jobs could not have written a better headline. Actually, he did write it. He also created an emotionally charged event that planted the headline into the dopamine dumping frontal cortex of his listeners' brains. Dropping a welcome bombshell. Jobs returned to Apple as the interim CEO in 1997. He dropped the interim from his title 2.5 years later. Instead of simply announcing that news via a press release, as most CEOs would do, Jobs created an experience out of it. At the end of a 2-hour presentation on January 5, 2000, Jobs said, almost as an aside, "There is one more thing." But he didn't break the news immediately. He built the anticipation. Jobs first acknowledged that the people at Apple who had been working on the internet strategy he had just described in the presentation, asking them to stand for applause. He publicly thanked his graphics and advertising agencies as well. Then he dropped the news. Everyone at Apple has been working extra hard these 2.5 years, and during this time I've been the interim CEO. I have another job at Pixar as the CEO, which I love. I hope that after 2.5 years, we've been able to prove to our shareholders at Pixar that maybe we can pull this interim CEO things off. So I'm not changing any of my duties at either Pixar or Apple, but I'm pleased to announce today that I am dropping the interim title. The audience went nuts. People leaped from their seats, yelling, hollering, and cheering. Jobs was humbled and made it clear that he didn't deserve all the credit for Apple's resurgence. "You're making me feel funny because I get to come to work every day and work with the most talented people on the planet. I accept your thanks on the part of everyone at Apple," Jobs concluded. Revolutionary product that changes everything. 26 minutes into his Macworld 2007 keynote presentation, Jobs had just finished a discussion of Apple TV. He took a swig of water and slowly walked to the center of the stage, not saying a word for 12 seconds. He then told a story that would lead to one of the greatest product announcements in corporate history. We've discussed several elements of this presentation, including Jobs' use of headlines and the rule of three. For this discussion, let's examine a longer section of the segment. As you can see from the excerpt in Table 13.1, Jobs took his time to reveal the news that would rattle in the industry. Jobs took his time to reveal the news that would rattle the industry and change the way millions of people access the internet on the go. Once the laughter subsided, Jobs spent the rest of the presentation explaining the current limitations of existing smartphones, unveiling the actual iPhone, and reviewing its key features. Anyone who saw the entire presentation will most likely tell you that the 3-minute introduction described in the table was the most memorable part of the entire keynote. Take note of how Jobs heightened anticipation to create the experience. He could easily have said, "The next product we would like to introduce is called iPhone. It's Apple's first entry into the smartphone market. Here's what it looks like. Now, let me tell you more about it." Not very memorable, is it? By contrast, the actual introduction whetted the audience's appetite with every sentence. After Jobs outlined the revolutionary product of the past, a listener could be thinking, I wonder what this third revolutionary product will be. Oh, I see. Jobs is going to announce 3 new products of this class. Cool. Wait, is it 3? Oh my gosh, he's talking about one product. All of those features in one product. This I've got to see. Every Steve Jobs presentation, major product announcement, and minor ones is scripted to have one moment that will leave everyone talking. The product takes center stage, but Jobs plays the role of director. Jobs is the Steven Spielberg of corporate presentations. What do you remember most from Spielberg's movies? Spielberg always has one scene that sticks in your memory for years. Indiana Jones pulling a pistol to kill the swordsman in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the opening scene of Jaws, or E.T. asking to phone home. In the same way, Jobs created one moment that will define the experience. Jobs has changed many things about his presentation style over the past 30 years, including his wardrobe, slides, and style. Through it all, one thing has remained consistent: his love of drama. Table 13.1, excerpts from Jobs' Macworld 2007 presentation. Steve's words: "This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years. Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. One is very fortunate of you get to work on just one of these in your career. Apple has been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these into the world." Slides. Image of Apple logo. In 1984, we introduced the Macintosh. It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole industry. Slides. Full screen photo of Macintosh. The date 1984 appears at the upper left next to the image. In 2001, we introduced the first iPod. It didn't just change the way we all listen to music, it changed the entire music industry. Slides. Full screen photo of the original iPod. The date 2001 appears at the upper left. Well, today we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. Back to image of Apple logo. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. Only image on slide is an artistic rendering of iPod. Words beneath the image: widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. Single artistic rendering of a phone with the words revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. Single rendering of a compass with the words breakthrough internet communicator. So 3 things: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communication device. Slides. The 3 images appears on the same slide with the words iPod, phone, internet. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. 3 images rotate. This is one device, and we are calling it iPhone. Slides. Text only, centered on slide iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. Slides. Text only. Apple reinvents the phone. And here it is. Laughter. Slides. A gag image appears. It's a photo of iPod, but instead of a scroll wheel, an artist had put an old-fashioned rotary dial on the MP3 player. Deliver memorable stories. A memorable moment need not be a major new product announcement. After all, few of us will announce breakthrough products like iPod. Something as simple as a personal story can be memorable. I once worked with a major grower of organic produce. The executives were preparing a presentation and filled it with mind-numbing statistics to prove that organic was better than conventionally growing fruits and vegetables. The statistics provided supporting points, but there was no emotionally charged event until a farmer turned to me and told me the following story. Carmine, when I worked for a conventional farm, I would come home and my kids would want to hug me, but they couldn't. Daddy had to take a shower first, and my clothes had to be washed and disinfected. Today I can walk right off the lettuce field and into the waiting arms of my kids because there is no toxic on my body to harm them. Several years later, I cannot recall any of the statistics this company presented, but I remember the story. The story became the emotionally charged highlight of the presentation. The mental post-it note. The brain doesn't pay attention to boring things, writes scientist John Medina. It does pay attention to an emotionally charged event. As Benjamin explains, the amygdala is chock full of the neurotransmitter dopamine. When the brain detects an emotionally charged event, the amygdala releases dopamine into the system. Because dopamine greatly aids memory and information processing, you could say the post-it note reads, "Remember this." According to Medina, if you can't get the brain to put what amounts to a chemical post-it note on an idea or a piece of information, the item will be more robustly processed and easily remembered. As you could imagine, this concept applies to business professionals as well as teachers and parents. Director's notes. Plan a holy shit moment. It needs to be a breakthrough announcement, something as simple as telling a personal story, revealing some new and unexpected information, or delivering a demonstration can help create a memorable moment for your audience. Movie directors such as Steven Spielberg look for those emotions that uplift people, make them laugh, or make them think. People crave beautiful, memorable moments. Build them into your presentation. The more unexpected, the better. Script the moment. Build up to the big moment before laying it into on your audience. Just as great novel doesn't give away the entire plot on the first page, the drama should build in your presentation. Did you see the movie The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis? The key scene was at the end of the movie, the twist that the majority of viewers didn't see coming. Think about ways to add the element of surprise to your presentations. Create at least one memorable moment that will amaze your audience and have them talking well after your presentation is over. Rehearse the big moment. Do not make the mistake of creating a memorable experience and having it bomb because you failed to practice. It must come off crisp, polished, and effortless. Make sure demos work and slides appear when they're supposed to.